Hey everybody, welcome back for yet another episode of the Corner Blue. I'm Andres Rico. I'm here with Hugo. How's it going, Hugo?
Doing great after eating some panes con chumpe during Thanksgiving. So I'm glad to be back and be able to talk about what we love, La Selecta. We have a game coming up, so there's a lot to talk about.
Definitely. And I know everyone out there missed us. Yeah, we've been gone for a little bit, had to take a rest and just enjoy the season, right? But more than anything, we're here. We're getting ready for the upcoming match of La Selecta with the U.S. And it's just been interesting observing from all the way here in the comfort of the U.S. of A, just seeing kind of the reactions to everything in the preparation to this match coming out of El Salvador. There's been a lot of interesting stuff coming out, positive and negative. But let's get into it. Hugo, were you able to check out the U.S. national team list? What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, no big surprises there. Knowing that the game was going to be played outside of the FIFA dates, we knew that the U.S. was going to be using a local base of players, MLS players, and I think there's one or two that are coming from Europe. So I'm not too surprised, but I am in fact very surprised about the call of the Galaxy player. I can't remember his name right now, but he
Efraín
was
Álvarez.
Efraín Alvarez, who has just a few months ago been in the Mexican U20 camp, and now he's being called to the U.S. national team. So
Sounds
that
like
was
a
a
familiar
surprise.
scenario
Yeah,
that we've
yeah,
seen pretty
that was
often.
a big surprise for
Yeah, it
me.
seemed
But
seemed like it got some press in Mexico where they're kind of like, "Wait, kid, I thought you were gonna play for us," which was interesting because you usually don't see the press battling or getting on players' cases when the that decision's still up in the air.
yeah, I mean, his case is interesting because he has played a good amount of games for for the Mexican youth national teams, and it's not like he hasn't been called for years. I mean, he's been on the Mexican youth squads as of recently, so it's a big surprise that now he's going into camp with the U.S., which doesn't necessarily mean that he's choosing the U.S., but to me that is a very clear signal when you make that choice while also being considered for the Mexican youth teams recently.
Yeah, it seems like it's sort of playing with fire, kind of a double-edged sword because yet he hasn't filed for that one-time change of federation, so he won't be eligible to get any minutes because he's still under the Mexican Federation. But that could also be interpreted many ways, and maybe that kind of changes his chances in Mexico. So we'll see how they handle it. I think El Salvador can definitely learn from a situation like this. And you've seen that slow progression, especially with the case of Marcos Velado, that is he still in El Salvador right now, Hugo?
He's still in El Salvador, and he's going to be there for a few more weeks.
And that's something new where instead of trying to invite a player on the brink of cracking the national team in the US for a couple practices, he's actually flown out there. He's gotten to stay there for a few weeks now. I bet his perception of the country has changed completely. And then on top of that, he's gotten to see or get a taste of the inner workings of what it would look like if he decided to go with La Sur.
Right. Yep.
And have you talked to him at all? Do you know how he's been feeling it, how he's adjusted to being over there?
Yeah, he's enjoying it. Took him a few, some time to get used to the different style of play, different ways of training. But luckily, the in terms of the infrastructure, things have improved a lot in El Salvador in fast food with the new hotel. The players definitely feel well taken care of. He's during the off time because the team only trains Monday through Wednesday. He's getting to train with some first division teams to just to keep the rhythm going. So I think he's enjoying himself, and he did have a few days of food poisoning during the first couple of weeks, which is to be expected. But yes, I
Been there,
think
done that. Yep.
I think it's a great way to absorb and get used to the culture and everything around playing for La Selecta, aside from just getting to know his teammates. You if you spend 6 weeks over there, you're definitely going to learn more about the culture and what it means and what soccer, football means for us over there.
There's nothing better than a welcome to El Salvador than a nice case of food poisoning, trip to the nearest pharmacy, or the doctor that your family knows to give you a nice little shot in the ass, maybe. But yeah, well, good for him. I'm glad he survived it. We'll see, how this influences his decision. I know his agent was also a part of, making the decision of taking this chance and taking the opportunity. So we'll see where that leads him. But going back to the match against the U.S., like we were saying, I'd say it's, between a B team, B, C team. More than anything, it seems like Berhalter's trying to bring in players for the multiple competitions that the U.S. is going to be facing next year. So he's looking at under 20s, pre-Olympic qualifying team. He's looking to what players can he have to call up in case, basically his reserves for the qualifiers that are coming up. But it is interesting that he's calling up a couple players too that are coming off of injuries, have had a lot of time away from the U.S. Men's team, like Sebastian Yeglet and also Paul Arriola, who's making a comeback. But I was noticing, and I was looking at the U.S. Men's team, of the 6 forwards that have been called up, only 6 goals have been scored by them for the national team. So they're starting fresh. This is just Berhalter trying out pieces. And that leads me to think, well, that would have been ideal for El Salvador, but that wasn't necessarily the case this time around for Los Goals, right, Hugo?
Yeah, I agree with you that it could be considered by many as a B or C squad, but also I think from the side of U.S. Soccer and Greg Berhalter, it's actually a very smart move because one thing is to play against a European team in Europe, which yes, we do know that some of the best leagues in the world are in Europe, but there's one thing is playing at a very nice stadium, and another one is to play against the Central American teams or the Caribbean teams in their home fields. Of course, this is going to be in the U.S., but it's a different style of play. There might be a little bit more physical. The Central American team. So I think it's good to get those players used to that type of those type of games. And Berhalter has a very talented pool of players. And I'm sure he's going to make use of some of the MLS players, and this is a great opportunity for him to see some of those players. And for us, unfortunately, with COVID and everything, we have our league going right now. This is outside of the FIFA date, so it's hard to get the players out of the teams. For the U.S., it's an ideal situation where it's the off season, and you can call any player that you want, with the exception of those who are still competing in the playoffs. But yes, very different situation for us. I think it was more of a last minute, unexpected, great opportunity to get some games, only our second friendly of the year, but it was put together last minute, and I think some of the things we've been seeing with the visas and all the other situations, it's just part of the process, the times that we're living in with COVID.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of backlash to the recent list that Los Golos provided a couple of days ago, mainly because, again, like we thought he would do this time around with a match like this, is try and bring new pieces in. I've always said this since his first stint as a national coach. I noticed this guy has a knack for casting. This guy, if you look at his first squad that he used in his debut and his first time around, his first stint, it looked a lot different from the one that was facing Mexico and U.S. in the hexagonal to qualify. I think the same thing's going to happen this time around. Obviously, he doesn't have to do that great of a amount of casting because, fortunately, I think in terms of the players themselves are a little more established this time around. He has a wider pool to deal with. He has more players playing abroad, so you can assume that they're at a certain level of fitness and won't have as a hard time competing for a spot on the team. But yes, I think there was a lot of expectation by the fans, by the press, of trying to bring in these foreign players and bring them to play against the U.S. because obviously the U.S. is one of the marquee opponents that we have in the area. And you don't want to show up shorthanded to a match with the big dogs.
Yeah, and but also if you look at we're getting a pretty decent amount of the foreign based players, and I think I understand from the fans perspective, you want, when it comes to selecting a squad for any game, there's always going to be disputes about they should have called this player and they should have called this other player and so on. But there's more to the game. There's more to what type of player the coach thinks that can fit into his playing style. And sometimes, you end up seeing the coach insist with certain players that the fans may think that are not the best players, and they think that there are better players in the league. Let's go back to the previous um, uh, team that De Los Cobos managed. I remember Salvador Correas getting a lot of criticism. Why does he keep calling Salvador Correas? But Salvador Correas was there in every game. He would call him into every game. So I think sometimes it's also important to respect, the coach's decisions, and they know more than us why they're taking certain decisions. But obviously, there's always going to be disputes about certain players. But going back to the foreign-based players, we're getting Seren, Darwin, El Russo Flores, Pablo Puñet, um, Dennis Pineda,
Roberto Dominguez.
and Roberto Dominguez. We're getting 5 foreign-based players in a non-FIFA fixture,
which is pretty damn lucky considering.
To me, it's like it's a very it was lucky for the Salvadorian Federation to be able to bring those players in, and for the players also, they're trying to win a spot in their teams. To me, that's also something else to recognize, that you can see it as, the love for La Selecta, that these players are willing to risk their moments. Like Roberto Dominguez has been starting for Bolivar in every game, and sometimes, going to the national team can affect your status in your club. But overall, I think we're having 5 foreign-based players for this type of games. I think it's not that bad at all.
And just looking at the list right now, I mean, if you compare this list with the list of players that played against Iceland, this one's pretty solid or pretty consistent with the lineup that De Los Cobos has been putting on the pitch throughout his second stint, or the qualifiers, or the League of Nations, whatever you want to call them, because it's been a nightmare to figure out, those games. But yeah, you look at this list, and I mean, I'll look at the one from Iceland right now. There were no players from Alianza at all. There, you could almost make the argument that he did have to call those that were based in the U.S., whether it was MLS or USL or NASL, to fill it in those gaps, because again, it was another friendly match that didn't take place during a FIFA match date. It was an unofficial match due to the points system that there was some worry about. But other than that, I think the squad that we see this time around is pretty solid, and I think they should be okay dealing with the caliber of player that they're going to have. And I'll name it off really quick. So keeper-wise, we have Henry Hernandez, Benji Elos was originally called up, but he is off of the squad. Do you remember why, Hugo? Was it the
There's
visa issue?
apparently it was a visa issue. Visa had expired or something along those
So
lines.
so Pleites has been called to replace him. Then in defense we have Alexander Larin. We see the return of Brian Tamacas that was gone for a while because of injury. You see Jonathan Jimenez that has been consistently playing for Los Cobos and also in Alianza. Same thing with Ivan Mancia. You have Alexander Mendoza, Roberto Dominguez coming in from Bolivia. Like you said, it's pretty admirable that he's willing to take the risk that is involved with leaving your team for an unofficial match day to go and play, for your national team. So that's something to admire, but hopefully that doesn't have any ramifications with the minutes that he would be getting in the future at Bolivar. In the midfield, he called up Mario Monterrosa, who's been a pillar for him this whole time, along with his buddy at Alianza, Narciso Orellana. You also have La Cabrita Portillo. Interesting that he called up Rodrigo Rivera, considering that Santa Tecla isn't having, the greatest of seasons. We see the return of Denis Pineda. That's pretty interesting because it seemed like for a while there was something going on there where he wasn't getting any minutes, but of course he was training in Portugal. So it seemed that maybe there was something happening behind the curtains, but finally he gets called back, so it's good to see him returning. But he's another one that he's getting minutes at his new club, and he's taking that risk by coming up here and playing against the U.S. We have Darwin Seren, who is on the off season with Houston Dynamo, just got re-signed. And Russo, he got called up along with Pablo Puñed. And then up top, we have David Diaz, Joaquin Rivas, and the return, well, not return because he was here in January, but Dustin Correas is playing, considering that currently he is unsigned. So that's the squad. I mean, if you would have given me the Iceland squad for this match, I would have been a little more shocked because it felt like back then, like I said, they're trying to patch things up because it was an unofficial friendly. And, basically because it was an unofficial friendly. So this time around, I don't see why there's so much backlash in El Salvador with the press. Do you have any opinion on that, or what's your take on that, Will?
Well, I mean, I hear and I see the squad, and it's pretty consistent with what the squad has been all year. There's not too many surprises.
All last year, because
All
there
of
haven't
last
been.
year,
Yeah,
yeah, all of last year. I mean, we have that's the base of the national team. Of course, there's always the players that, um, that are starting to have a good moment, such as Eric Rivera in Bolivia,
yeah, I
and
would have liked to see him.
I also heard something about possibly not having his documents ready. Of course, there's always, the question whether Bonilla is going to return to the squad or not, but he's just coming back from injury, so I'm assuming he doesn't want to travel that long from Thailand to come into the U.S. And there's the whole thing with the fast players. But if you really look at the squad, it's a pretty solid squad. It's not like we're seeing players that we've never seen. There's always one or two players that one may think should have been there, but we're seeing what has been consistent for the last 2 years. So I'm not too surprised. I mean, for Iceland, we had Tomas Granito, who was called, Alexis Cerritos, who was there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty consistent squad. I think it's going to be a good game. Come on, let's just remember that we have only played one friendly game this year. So the fact that we're playing it, to me, is like it's a nice way to end the year. Yes, I'm being positive, and I always, as people know me, I kind of put all the negativity on the side. Overall, there's always going to be things that can be improved, but I think overall it's good that we're playing at least a second game this year. And if you look at the squad, it's not like we're seeing a whole bunch of new players that we haven't seen. Um, And let's remember, De Los Cobos is well known for sticking to his squad. He likes to put in the work with the same players, and every now and then you see, like you said, it could be like, during the first round, a few years ago, he had El Pegadubon, Cabrera, and a whole bunch of players who were not part of the squad during the hexagonal. So he does that casting until he finds his team, but he does like to be consistent with his squad, and we're seeing 90%. I mean, 85, 90% of what we have been seeing. There was interest in calling Enrico, and we know that, due to COVID, things are pretty complicated. I don't think that the citizens from the Netherlands or any citizen of the European Union is allowed into the U.S. unless you hold a U.S. passport, which is the case with Pablo Puñet, which is why he can play this game. So it's tricky. So there was interest in bringing a player like Enrico in, but I'm happy that we're gonna play.
Yeah, no, definitely me too. And then on top of that, the cherry on top is that it's actually being televised. So that's kind of the positive when you're playing with the US, that now that soccer culture also has grown here, that any match that they're playing, most likely it's going to be televised. And I
And
think
there's nothing else going on. So a lot of people are gonna be watching that game because there's no other games going on during that time.
exactly. And it's not like we're, at least I'm not inviting conformity. I mean, when it comes to, like you said, when it comes to call ups, you're always going to find people that, defer from what the coach wants. We all have our favorite players in mind that we wish could be on the list consistently. And most of the time, that just isn't the case. I mean, another example would be Kevin Santamaria, who's been gone for a while. He had problems with PEDs for a while. That kind of got him into a mess, but he made a comeback, definitely came back really strong for his team in Peru under La Chochera. Unfortunately, that team descended, so his future there, we don't know if he's going to stay in Peru, but he would have been an interesting piece to bring up for this type of game, considering how long he's been gone and his future at his club, is basically set. He's not going back.
Yeah, he's definitely making a case to come back. So yeah, I hope to see him in the near future. He's definitely a very good player. He performed really well under Albert Roca.
I think one thing to just take into consideration is when you see call ups for either unofficial friendlies or camps or even tournaments like the what used to be, right, the Copa Centroamericana or Copa Concacaf, those types of camps or those types of games are those perfect opportunities to be trying out these different pieces, which is something that you want to have leading up to those qualifiers, because once you hit qualifiers, it is more risky to be trying different players out to get a feel for things. And that's kind of what we saw at the beginning of the qualifying round for the Gold Cup and all those friendlies, or the I guess you would say the League of Nations matches, which were in a sense qualifiers. And that's why things were so shaky. And I think we'll continue to see that progression. The only thing that is concerning is with COVID, everyone's been away from the pitch. And I just saw that today they announced the calendar for the qualifiers, which basically they're doing this new thing where instead of 2 match days per, fixture, it's going to be a total of 3. So they're going to try and condense as many games in a weekend or a week, which is a little concerning. And that's why I think it's even more important to have a bigger pool of players to pick from, because 3 games in less than less than 5 days, that's just opening things up to possible injuries. And that's when you need to have a stacked squad to be able to cope with situations like that. And the qualifiers are starting in March, and if I'm not incorrect, they go all the way until the latter part of the year. I think till, do you know what month, Uwe?
Well, I know the first round goes until June.
Okay, and
Yeah,
then once all that gets set up, then the octagonal would be from basically September through March of 2022.
yeah. But
So,
prior to that, there's two rounds prior to the
mhm,
octagonal.
yep. So that's why I think, okay, he's gonna try some pieces out. I think it would have been ideal to have our own version of a camp, even if we wouldn't have had the strongest of squads, just so that new players can crack the national team. I liked how Richard Mejia had used that verb, cracking the national team when we interviewed him. But there are a lot of players in the foreground, I mean, or in the background, sorry, that could be, those potential reserves for a team that's going to play at least 10 games if they want to make it to the World Cup. And speaking of the list, it's been really cool seeing everyone's reactions to it, especially on Twitter. Um, I'd like to give a shout out to Raul Flores that chimed in that he would have liked to see Enrico and Marcos Velado play. Sander Franco mentioned that he would have liked Tony Rugamas in the squad. Carlos Cuse or Qs wanted Kevin Santamaria, as we mentioned. Bryant Maga mentioned that he would have liked a striker in general, which that's valid up to a point. Shout out to Will Ryan, who mentioned or asked about Junior Burgos, and he was wondering if he was not released by his club. Well, he's a case of one of the players that does obviously, have a visa or is in the U.S. He just is in the off season. It must have been just a decision that the Los Cobos took to not include him in the list. Another comment we had was by Josue Munguia. He actually says it's the wrong list. We need a forward like Amando Moreno, Marcos Velado Segai, Edwin Alvarado, Christian Gil, or David Rugamas. What do you think about that comment?
Yeah, shout out to Josue. I think he goes by Josue Vimesh as well. He's one of my top followers in Selecta Talent as well. So thank you for your support. Um, yeah, I think a lot of us would like to see those players at some point. Um, I haven't seen much of Elvin Alvarado. Um, David Rugamas, I know has 4 goals, I think, in the current tournament. And in terms of the other guys, like Armando Moreno, yes, we love to see him, but the reality is that I don't even think he's legally eligible to play yet. So one important factor to bring up to the fans is that even though they're friendlies, they're not allowed to play friendlies if they don't hold a Salvadorian passport. Even if it's
Exactly.
outside of the FIFA match date, you must have a Salvadorian passport. So some of these
Like the
players,
Efrain Alvarez case with the U.S.
right? Some of these players are not eligible to play for La Selecta yet. But yes, I would love to see some of those players and have a bigger pool. I mean, especially considering that some of this FIFA fixtures are going to be packed next year. 3
And
games in
the
7
five
days.
subs, the 5 subs, man. If
Yeah.
that stays, that's gonna change things too. Like that will allow you to have a bigger door or a bigger archway to bring people in. I know that Los Cobos even mentioned that he would have liked to pick a lot of players from the domestic league, but because of the game being last minute, it seemed that logistically it wouldn't have been possible to get visas for players that haven't even been on the radar, especially with no games going on. I mean, he mentioned Echalatio Lemus and Jairo Enriquez and other players from Chalata, which, has been the interesting underdog for like the last couple of tournaments. Players like that are on the brink. So we'll see, hopefully, with more time, more planification, and especially now that it's set in stone for March. Football's back, ladies and gentlemen, whether there's crowds or not, but football's back, and I don't think there's any way of trying to back out or try and find a way around having to face those matches. They're there. We have to play them.
Yeah, you're right. He mentioned about wanting to bring some of those new young well, not so young faces, but new faces to the national team. And one thing to know, obviously, there's always things you can do to prepare ahead of time, but we are living in unprecedented times, and it's not like a player can just go as a normal citizen and go and request a visa just because, to have a U.S. visa doesn't really work that way. Usually the applications for visas go in together as a group for an event, in this case a soccer match. So usually, and this is just my opinion, not because I have any insider information, this is just my opinion and experience because I have organized matches in the past. You put in a package together to request a U.S. visa to come in for an event, and sometimes those visas are granted for 3 months. So we know that in El Salvador's case, usually we have at least 2 to 3 matches in the U.S. in a year. So a lot of the players have visas already because they've been playing in those matches. They kind of keep getting renewals on those visas, and they're ready to go. In this case, we haven't played in the U.S. since January last of this year. So I think that the combination of COVID and the game kind of just last minute game, which I think is great. I mean, those last minute in COVID, there's a lot of logistics that now, I mean, the test, the COVID test and everything, a lot of logistics that are new for a lot of national teams, a lot of teams. And yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we're not getting to see new faces.
Yeah, which obviously is frustrating. But like you said, this is just a weird year in general. Things have been off, or we've had to all adjust to it in one way or another. And so you're just seeing the reflection of it when it comes to footy in the soccer world. So we just have to buckle up because 2021 will be interesting with trying to make up for all that lost time. I also want to give a shout out to Eric Rosales for sharing his starting 11 on Instagram earlier. That's the type of interaction we want to have with you guys. We want to hear from you guys because, we're all fans here. We all want to be able to give our input. And when do we get to do it in English other than, oh yeah, the Corner Blue? That's why we started this thing. So feel free to send us all your starting 11s, all your suggestions or players that you would have liked to see. That's the type of stuff we want to have on here and be able to share, especially leading up to something as special as a match with the U.S.
Yeah, and shout out to Enrico Hernandez too. I mean, he's actually one of our listeners. He told me the other day that he listens to our podcast. He really enjoys it.
Nice, nice.
And good
Shout out
luck
to
to
Rico
him.
then. Thanks for listening, man. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Like,
he's
do you
been
have any
called to
updates on him? Because I saw that. Yeah, he's been training with the first team. That's really exciting to know that he's on the brink of cracking that. So keep
Yeah,
at it.
he missed about a week of training. He had a cold. He was tested for COVID and it was negative, but he did had a pretty bad cold, probably flu, and he missed a whole week of training. So he only trained a day, I think, just one full training. But this week he had a full training, and it's good to see him again back in the squad for the first team tomorrow against Peck Swoley. I don't even
Hey,
know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but hey,
I'll take it. I'll take
uh,
it. I think that was the right pronunciation.
I mean, I don't
Your
know if
Dutch
it's
is
just
amazing.
me. I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm very excited. I mean, we're at the brinks of probably seeing the first Salvadorian player in the Eredivisie, and I'm excited. I mean, it's one of the top leagues in the world. We're looking at an a 19-year-old who may be making his debut very soon. I mean, hopefully happens Saturday. We're recording this on Friday, so I don't know when we have it uploaded. Probably Saturday, tomorrow. He hopefully he gets some minutes. I think it's exciting. If you really look at the Enrico prospect, I mean, we're looking at a player who might be the first ever to play in the Dutch first division. He's 19. he can play for the U20s, for the U23s, and for the senior team. I mean, to me, he's one of the most exciting players for us right now. And he's, I talk to him every day, and he's very excited and looking forward to playing for us. So yeah, shout out to Enrico.
Definitely. No, and his example is yet another of, you know, COVID, the year, just, getting the best of things. But I think the main thing is just being patient, taking things with stride. I'll quote El Russo on this, and we've heard all this a lot in our families, but los tiempos de Dios son perfectos. And it's true. I mean, things happen for a reason, and the best thing is just try and keep your chin up and get through the circumstances, because at the end of the day, or at the end of that road, there's always light. So I think the main thing is hopefully Enrico will be patient and just take that opportunity once it comes. But it seems that it's coming really, really soon. So that's something I know a lot of Salvadoran fans are excited to see. And then just seeing what 2021 will bring and the possibilities with him finally joining up and putting on that blue kit.
Yeah, another one of our guests, Carla Portillo, signed. She's back after her long injury. She's back playing professional soccer. She's going to be playing in Sweden, so that's very exciting to see for another prospect for
Yeah, good for her.
our national team, our women full squad.
Definitely. I think, and that's been kind of cool about the talks that we've been able to have the last couple of months, because it's varied with players that are active, and then also players that were just going through this awkward or weird situation due to the type of year that we're having. So it is, again, great news to know that Carla is on her way back, and hopefully she just wrecks. That's all I want her to do, is just wreck out there. So good for her. Well, that's basically it, everybody. So really quick, I'll give you guys the match days for the qualifiers just so you can mark them down. The first one is going to be against Granada on March 25th. Then on Sunday the 28th, El Salvador will be playing Montserrat. Then we'll have a 2-month gap. Then El Salvador will be playing the U.S. Virgin Islands on the 5th. That's on a Saturday. And they'll close out the round on Tuesday, June 8th against Antigua and Barbuda. So again, Caribbean teams on paper, the ideal would be not to have to play against these teams, considering the amount of games that the team will have to play throughout 2021. But this is the closest as you're going to get to an opportunity to try out all these new pieces and players without having to take too much of a risk. I think at least you have your starting 11, your tight starting 11, your players off the bench, and then depending on the results, you have those young guys that you want to throw in there, get those minutes, get them, inserted into the national team, and then see where they take off from there. I'd like to just remember what it looked like when De Los Cobos threw Fito in there, and during his first stint, when you saw Cristian Castillo getting thrown in there, when he hadn't appeared at all on the radar on the national team. And within a couple months, there he is dancing in front of Frankie Hayjuk. So we'll see where this goes.
All right, everybody. So definitely nice to get back into doing this podcast. I've been enjoying it so much. This last week we lost one of our legends in the football world, Diego Armando Maradona, who passed away. So we just wanted to mention that, and I think it's been a huge loss for the sport. And just a reminder, that we have our own Maradona, El Mágico González. So every time I see, that there's all of this recognition that he's getting all over the world, it's always good to do those things for people while they're alive, because we never know when we're not going to have them around. But definitely a very shocking in a way, or hard to believe. Probably not shocking because we knew that his health was deteriorating, but yeah, the football world lost one of the most important players of all time.
He's like a crazy uncle that was around or you knew was around. You didn't see him all the time due to their lifestyle, didn't like hanging out with the family that much. But because you knew they were live and kicking and you got to meet up with them ever so often and hear some of the funny stuff that they did and then just the legacy that the guy had, it was comforting to know that he was around, and it was awesome to see him get back into the game coaching in Mexico and then finally making that return to Argentina. It didn't matter where the guy went as an opposing coach. He got the ovations that a legend of his stature deserved everywhere he went. And like you said, that's why we got to value our living legends, and especially in Mexico. And I think that's it coincides as well that there's going to be this testimonial match, I guess you could say, or an homenaje to him in Houston. I guess it's going to be an all-day affair tomorrow or the 5th in Houston. So it'll be cool to see the vids or hear the comments on how that day transpires. I know a lot of former players are going to be involved. There are going to be different small matches occurring throughout the day. And it's really dope to see the Saudi community in Houston getting together and doing something special for our Maradona, our GOAT, and Mago. Before we go, really quick, I got a question from one of our listeners about 2 weeks ago, and basically he was asking you, Uul, what he could do to try and get his career going again. He says he's 24. He played in college. He hasn't played in 4 years, but he's trying to get in shape. So just wondering, what would be like a good path to get back into things? And in your experience or in your opinion, what do you think would be the proper step to try and get back into things?
Yeah, I mean it can be tricky, definitely very difficult at that age, but you should never give up on your dreams. I think that first of all, getting back in good shape, and in the US there's always the USL teams that hold open tryouts. So that could be one of the of that could be an opportunity, to show what you got, and get back to it and play pro. There's other leagues, there's semi-pro leagues in the US that are also becoming very popular. I think there's the NISA, I think, NISI, which is it was kind of like a creation of all those teams that couldn't join NASL, didn't want to be part of NASL or USL. So there's a whole bunch of professional players there. In fact, there's a few Salvadorian players there. So yeah, I mean, working really hard, getting back in shape, and look for those teams that usually in a month or two are going to be holding open tryouts, and that can be an opportunity.
Yeah, so shout out to Lord Hysteria for that question, and thanks for listening, man. We definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, so thanks for listening to us again. It feels nice to know that that we have people who are driving from work, whatever you're doing, and you have the opportunity to listen to us. To me, that's very gratifying, because I've been on the other side of looking forward to that podcast or that radio show coming on, so that I could have something to listen on a long drive. So thank you for your support. Please, share our videos, talk to your friends about it. We're here if you prefer English but you love La Selecta. That's what we're doing this podcast.
Part of doing this podcast, like Uul mentioned it, is being able to generate that excitement. It's nice to be able to have that time once a week to connect with you guys, especially getting that feedback on social media, because or else it's just us talking into mics, talking into a computer screen. So getting that feedback, knowing we're connecting with all of y'all, makes it worth it. So again, thanks a lot for the support, guys, and we'll see you guys next week. So take it easy. Don't forget to look for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can catch our podcast, just the audio version, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to watch us, we're on Facebook and YouTube. Everything's under the Corner Blue. So thanks. We'll see you guys next time.